Work on the Riley is paused while I wait for some parts, various bits and pieces, so I can do the fuel system and the wiring, at least the main battery cables. So I'm working on the Velocette again. I have cleaned up the frame here. I machined up little end plugs and have welded those in just to extend those tubes back out to the right size. Still needs a little bit of finishing off there, and then I can wire brush all of that, put it back together, repaint it. Similar for the handlebars, they're in pretty good condition. I have looked at getting new grips and things locally. I think you can get those reproduction type ones. This is one of the grips that was on it, which has got Doherty on it. So hopefully I can get those. And I am slowly, somewhere, I think it's inside, making a list of all the parts I need to order from overseas. So I'll hopefully be doing that soon. I think it may be easier, although expensive for postage, to get new barrels and pistons, pistons to match. Because otherwise what I'm going to have to do is find someone here who can machine these for me, but I need to get the pistons first to make sure they can machine them to the right piston size. So it may be better to leave that to people who know what they're doing and just pay to get them from the UK. These are my wheel bearings. They're just getting a little bit of surface rust on them, so I need to clean those. And my wheels and tires are over here. This paint's had a decent amount of time to dry now, so my tire mounting paste arrived. I'm just waiting for a nice hot day so that I can put the tires out on the driveway, let them get hot, which will make them a bit more pliable, and then I can mount the tires on the rims. I've sprayed inside the rims with lanolin spray as a bit of rust protection. And at the moment, I'm starting to work on the body. I've kind of been putting it off, I guess, but I think the time has finally come to actually start welding something. Again, it's suffering from surface rust. This is what happens in here, but that'll come off pretty easily. This was the glove box lid that somebody has hacked to put gauges into, and they did a horrible job cutting out the holes. So what I've done is drawn around them, given me a nice clean line. I've already cut the first one out. I'm using my panel nibblers just to cut those out, and then the file, and then a little sanding drum on the Dremel just to get them nice and smooth. And with a nice circular hole like that, I can then cut out blanks from sheet steel to weld back in. I'm going to TIG weld those in. I think this is already distorted a little. It's hard to tell. I think there is shape in this, because if you look at this here, it's not flat. The sides aren't flat, so I think there is meant to be shape in this. I'm just not sure how much. So yeah, there is definitely shape in it though. So hopefully I'll be able to weld those in and then finish all that off with a hammer and dolly nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and trim up the other ones and then find some sheet steel to make the patches. And I think this is 1 mil steel. I need to measure it. Okay. As I mentioned in my other film, I'm waiting for parts for the Riley. So this weekend I've been working on the Velocette finally. I have been going through the parts and making a list of parts I think I need. I still need to go through that, and I think I will just talk to the club about getting entire barrels and piston sets. I think that's going to be the easiest way for me to do it. It's not the cheapest way, but I'll know it works. So that's probably what I'm going to do there. Haven't even started going through the rear axle. The frame is I welded that up. I think I've mentioned that. I need to figure out grips and a throttle for the handlebars, and I need to find out whether or not you can just use a AML style throttle cable, because that seems to be what came with it, and I believe you can get these pretty easily with the right sort of grips. So I'm not sure that that's correct, but that'll work. So it's probably what I'm going to get for now, because I can get those locally. But I've started fixing up the metalwork on the body, and I should probably just stay back here because it doesn't look too bad. But really this was a hell of a mission. So I obviously made the little pieces at the back and I've welded those in. That was not easy. It went nowhere near as well as I had hoped. I was hoping I'd be able to TIG them and get nice, perfect sort of fusion welds. The metal's old and it's thin and it's dirty, and I didn't film any of that or show any of that because it was so embarrassingly bad. I thought I'd wait till I'd cleaned it up. Similar with the lid. That hasn't come out too bad, but you can definitely see where the welds are. Needs a bit more cleanup. I may have ended up with a little bit more shape in that than they had originally. Not sure. It looks like they were fairly curved given those side profiles, but yeah, I just found it really hard to do the welding and get the welds nice. I've been doing more smoothing out off the sides. The whole thing's warped and distorted. I don't know if they were like that from the factory. I suspect the sandblasting I had done also warped it. It's been damaged and then welded up in the past, so that's probably warped it. I've welded up some of the cracks here. I have been trying to planish out this as much as possible. There was a ton of filler in here when I got it though, so I'm not worried about having a bit of filler going in it when I reassemble it. Somebody has modified this. This should be spot welded on, and those little crescent shapes are where they've cut out the spot welds, and you can see where they've welded them, the holes up, and then they made this to be bolt on. I'll probably just leave it bolt on. It's not going to be a perfect bike. That can be part of its story, I guess. Welded up the hole that was here where they'd mounted the regulator. That had all cracked. This is all cracked along here. This is where the seat mounts through these 4 bolts. This had cracked. You can see where they have drilled the ends of the cracks, which is good. And then they'd mounted another plate here, which is crooked, so there's extra mounting holes. These 2 mounting holes are for the strap that holds the battery in. I'm missing that. These are extra holes for, I think they had a switch and a battery charging socket in there, so I need to fill those. There was a crack here that I've welded up. The side pieces, now these were really difficult to do because I can't get easily right in behind there. Look down here. You can see what somebody's done is cut away this inner piece. That let me at least get in there to weld it. So I had to trim this back a little bit further so I could actually get to the back of the weld. I'm assuming that this came all the way down and joined along the edge here. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do there, if I will add another piece in here to make this stiffer, in which case what I'll try and do is I'll just plug weld it to this, because there's no way I can do a nice fusion weld there and get to the back of the weld to get everything cleaned up. I could barely do it here. But same on this side. I've cleaned up the welds as best I can. The problem I was having is this original steel is quite thin, and as I was trying to weld it, you get the edges of the steel pulling apart. It's really annoying. Usually happens more with aluminium than steel, I've found, but I just had a peg of a job trying to weld it. I had to use filler rod. As soon as you use filler, you have to grind back the welds before you try and hammer anything, because the metal has to be the right thickness. The first side I just did with TIG and filler, and it went really badly. So the second side I did a technique I've seen Kyle do on his channel, Carter Auto Restyling, where he MIG tack welds it and then grinds the MIG welds down so they're flush, and then TIG welds over the top. I did that. That worked a lot better. So that's probably how I'm going to do the Riley, actually. So it's getting there. It's not perfect. It's going to need a skimmer filler. The shape around here is just strange. It's hard to see exactly how these panels go because there's a sort of pressing in here where it mounts to the back of the rear swing axle, I guess you'd call it. Mounts kind of on there. This kind of fades into the body, but I'm not sure exactly how. There's a kind of pressing in here, which I've mostly managed to recreate. It's going to need filler to hide the welds. The other thing, I think I mentioned at one point, I wasn't sure what shape this needs to be. I've got the answer because this is the number plate mount and it fits over that, so that gives me the right shape. That'll fit on there. I'd welded up where it had cracked down here. I need to recreate the back of the tail because they've chopped that off as well. So all I'm going to do for that, there's the other side. It's getting smoother, but it's never going to be perfect. For the back of the tail, I'm just going to copy the profile that's on the back of the front mudguard. That's the one I'm actually using. So I'll just, it's two pieces of steel and then it's kind of welded, edge welded, the two pieces together like that. So you can see that's from the factory where it's gone in a little bit. So it's getting better. Like I say, it's never going to be perfect. It was kind of a hack job when I got it. But I want to make a nice solid bike and I don't want it to look too bad. So we'll keep going. Yeah, rear axle and bevel drive I need to strip down and clean up, but everything seems fine there. The radiator's done. I should probably put it somewhere where it's not going to get scratched. Petrol tank's done. And then there's a whole bunch of engine parts I need to get. Crank, not crank, clutch, various other bits and pieces. And sort out the electrical system. You can get new modern ones, I think electronic ones. So I may look at doing that. That may be worthwhile. Yeah, the only other thing worth mentioning is to grind the welds. I also used one of Kyle's tricks, which I've seen him do before and never thought much of it. I've always used either the angle grinder or roll-lock discs on a die grinder. What Kyle uses is one of these stones in a cordless drill, and this works incredibly well. I wish I knew about this sooner. So with the stone, you can just take the top off the weld, which is exactly what you want to do. You want to thin out the weld, but not the metal around it. And this actually works pretty quickly, and it's pretty controllable. So, you know, I was able to do that in most places. Yeah, things like this always look better on film. You see a lot of YouTube videos and, you know, everything looks perfect, but you know, if you really look close, nothing is. Although Kyle's stuff's pretty good. So, you know, I'm not that level of metal finisher, but I think with a bit more work and a bit more filing, I think I'm going to need to order a big box of 80 grit random orbit sanding pads. I go through a lot of those, but doing that, a bit more hammer and dolly work, skimmer filler, you know, high build primer, I'm sure it'll come out fine. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So hopefully there'll be a bit more progress on that soon. I should add that I haven't finished welding all of that yet, of course. Like I said, I've been working on this all weekend and I'm a bit tired of it. So normally I don't open the bar here till about 4 o'clock. I think it's about 3:15, 3:30 now. and I was done for the day. That's enough metalwork and grinding and metal dust everywhere. So I'll save that for another day. I may end up putting another plate or something under there, because that does seem like a bit of a weak spot. So the seat mounts here, there's a little sort of pyramid shaped piece, and the front of the seat goes there. So maybe that is a bit of a weak spot. Maybe I can put something there to reinforce it. The whole thing's wiped down with Penetrol at the moment, so it doesn't just surface rust again. Yeah, I think that's all there was to say about this at the moment.